Really excited to hear that. Any questions before we get going? All right, I got it up there already. The USB, yeah, I found it, and then I just found your USB. If you want one, or I'll need to go look at it. I have one, but I might be losing it from here. Well, if you are, I apologize. I feel like no-show Jones, like I was not going to show up. But at the last minute, I was going to make sure that video would play, and it wouldn't. But Darcy, are you saying you had my little USB? Yeah, it's sitting right here. So that's why I was trying all the ones I had at home, thinking, what in the world? How can it just disappear? It's sitting right there. And I looked it up and said, maybe this is it. So that should. I could have been like, 25 minutes early. So thank you all for coming tonight. Many of you have been here every night this week. I really, really appreciate you coming to hear me talk about Appalachia, which I'm really passionate about, celebrating and preserving our wonderful heritage and culture. So tonight I'm going to talk about, though, all my connections with the John C. Campbell Folk School. I hope all of you have been staying here, taking classes and things, or if you're just visiting, that you had the opportunity to visit the History Center over there. So much history. So wonderful to learn more about the John C. Campbell Folk School. And even if you've not had time to do that, I'm sure that you have maybe seen on social media, maybe you got an email or something, but you've realized this is the 100th year anniversary of the Folk School, which is so amazing. 100 years for any organization is amazing. Of course, there's been ups and downs, but what a wonderful thing for the Folk School to be able to, celebrate 100 years. We're still going strong. So amazing. So I've always been really intrigued and amazed by the story of the Folk School, how Olive Jane and her husband John traveled the mountain region, and really had a heart to help the mountain people. I especially liked how they tried to help them, though, because they kind of met them where they were at. They didn't try to change them or try to turn them into something else. But I've also loved, of course, some of you that are local really know this story, sort of the embellished story of Fred O. Maybe you've had the opportunity to hear Jan Davidson tell the wonderful story about how he surprised Marguerite and Olive Jane by basically telling them he knew all about, folk schools in Denmark. He was well versed with the Danish people. Several years ago, I worked here at the folk school, and I had the opportunity to just pour over some of those wonderful archives that are housed here. I was especially drawn to the photos because, of course, I was always hoping there would be somebody in them that I'd recognize, somebody that I would know. But even when I didn't, I always wondered, did they know my people? Maybe my Papa Wade was friends with them or something like that. Especially heartwarming are the pledge cards. And you can see some of them back there in those displays. If you've never seen them before, you can afterwards go back there and look at them. And I'm going to share some too if the video that I was worrying about, if it works. But they're really heartwarming because you can just see why the people of Brasstown really wanted the folk school to be here. So they were pledges from the people of Brasstown to help the folk school get up and running, basically, is what they were. And they ranged from donating land to so many loads of wood each year, to a set number of days they would come and work for free. Whatever the folk school needed them to do, they would do that. Even to donations of flower bulbs and small bushes and trees and things. So although some of those stories about Fredo may have been embellished over the years, there's just no doubt that Fredo and his neighbors saw a really great benefit to having the folk school here in Brasstown, and they worked really hard to help Olive Jane achieve her goals. So I live just down the road a little ways. So the goings on at the folk school have been like an indirect part of my life since I was born, even when I wasn't stopping here or anything like that. I've been able to notice improvements and changes as I drive to and fro, ever since I was big enough to really pay attention and notice such things when I was a girl. But anyone who's called Grasstown home over the last 100 years could say that exact same thing. I have deeper connections, though, to the folk school, and my connections are of the familial nature, just like the culture of Appalachia. My great Aunt Hazel shared a Christmas memory with me many years ago, Appalachian Christmas memory, and it involved the John C. Campbell Folk School. The first memory the first Christmas that she could really remember that she was old enough was in 1938, and she lived just, if you go out in the parking lot, the road across from this, really when you're turning, you can turn either way, but the road on the other side, the Hallshaw farm is on that road, and she lived on that farm. Her papa was a sharecropper. The year before she can remember, in 1938, my father was born on the farm there. His daddy was a sharecropper there too. So she told me, she said, I remember that year Papa brought in a pine tree he cut in the woods. He'd even found one with pine cones, on that. So it was like it was already decorated by nature. And then she said, my stepmother, Carrie, allowed us children to use flour and water to mix up a paste to make chains of paper. In those days, flour was really hard to come by. And Hazel said, it still pleases me to know that she let us use her flour. She wanted us to enjoy the act of decorating enough to let us use it, even though it was hard for them to get it. She said they drew pictures of, stars and trees and different things and cut them out and put a needle and thread through them so they could hang them on the tree. But she said they heard the John C. Campbell Folk School was having a Christmas party for the children. She said the road to the school went alongside by the river. It was about 3 miles in distance. I remember my step-siblings, Mary Jo, Frances, Frank, Wayne, and her, they all walked to the party. She said, I remember the beauty in my mind's eye till this day. The school had decorated a huge Christmas tree, and they had a little play with the Nativity, with Mary and Joseph, and a little crib for baby Jesus. I sat there lost in wonder, trying to take in every detail so I could relive the magic over and over, she said. After the play, Santa Claus arrived. Aunt Hazel had never seen Santa before and could hardly believe he was here. She said Santa carried a tow sack instead of a fancy bag, and in the tow sack were dozens of small brown bags full of the prettiest hard candies she said she had ever seen. Santa handed out those little brown bags, chock full of candy, tied at the top with a string. She said to say we were happy just didn't even do justice to the emotion that we felt. Well, on the way back home, Aunt Hazel wanted to talk all about the play, go over every detail, but the other kids she said they were just so happy they wouldn't talk to me. They just wanted to laugh and celebrate all the way home. Well, after they reached home, Aunt Hazel said, I shared a piece of candy with Papa and with Carrie, and then I hid the rest, wanting to savor every piece of happiness I'd received from the party. She said the other kids soon ate theirs, but they never found her hiding place. So it's really nice to think about how that happened right here where we're at, right in here, and today the folk school still has a Christmas party. So it's really nice that tradition has continued, and wonderful to think about. I have my own memories of the Christmas parties here, but to think about my great Aunt Hazel too. So my Mama Marie Wilton was her name, but I call her Mama. She worked here at the folk school on and off during her adult life. She worked over there above the History Center that I was telling you about. And that was in the days when they finished all of the Grasstown carvings here on campus. They do it differently these days, but they finished them all on site then. And so she did that. She helped finish the carvings. When I worked in the marketing department of the folk school, I worked in that same area, and there was hardly a day that I didn't think when I was coming in or coming up the steps or coming into the building that I didn't think about my Mama Marie and how odd it was that all these years later I was working in the same place. Odd, but very happy too. I'm very happy to know that. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. She also worked, though, in the dining hall and in the craft shop. I can remember both of those jobs myself. The folk school, though, looked much different in those days. The dining hall was actually here in the keep house, downstairs there in the basement. And my first memory of ever being here at the folk school, that's where it was at, in the dining hall with my mom. My aunt, Mama's only daughter, my aunt had come for a visit from Campbell, North Carolina, not too far, and brought my cousins. And Mama took us all to show us, I guess, just where she worked. What I was amazed by were the refrigerators that slid open. I'd never seen anything like that. And then the fruit that was in them, you know. So Mama said we could all have a piece of fruit. I don't remember what I chose, but I remember my oldest cousin, Debbie, she got a lemon. And she let, I don't know if I'd ever even seen a lemon, but she let me taste it. And of course I made a horrible face, and she laughed at me. In those days, the craft shop was just in yonder in the living room. And Mama Marie's sister, Ina, also worked in the craft shop in those days. Back then, the elementary school I went to, which was just up the road, Martins Creek School, my brothers and I attended there. They would often take field trips here to the folk school. One year, it was really exciting, I got to ride to the folk school with Mama instead of, riding the bus. So I was just here already waiting for my busload of fellow students to show up. She took me around in this little area and introduced me to everybody, I guess showed me off. I was so backward though, I hid behind her and wouldn't really talk to anybody. But she bought me in the craft shop a little Jacob's ladder. Y'all remember the little pieces of wood and then they fold down. And it was white and it was attached with red ribbon, the little pieces of wood. I kept it for many, many years. And I think the statute of limitations has run out, so I can share with you something I did that day that I should not have done. So hopefully I won't be arrested before I leave. But in the craft shop, there was a whole basket of just the least little carvings of animals. And I just couldn't resist. And I stuck my little hand in there and pulled out a rooster and put it in my pocket. And I don't have the Jacob's ladder, but I still do have a rooster. I hope the folk school doesn't make me give it back. I've had it for so long. Yeah. But as my mom went back to work and I began to explore, waiting on my friends from school to get here, I started going farther. And once I saw those steps in there, of course, I had to go upstairs. And I ended up in a bedroom, and then I was unsure of how to go back to where I come from. But thankfully, a housekeeper, a very nice housekeeper, took me back. I'm sure she was telling me too, probably I shouldn't be prowling around. But the next generation of Mama Marie's family was also tied to the folk school. Her father, my father, her son, Jerry Marshall Wilson, also called Pat, told me stories of different people coming out to his elementary schools when he was at Martins Creek and at Ogden School, just up the road in Warren. And they would come from the folk school to teach dances and folk games and things like that. He said he never liked the dancing part, but he did like the music. He enjoyed that part. And later in his life, he was one half of the famed Wilson brothers. I say famed, but really only here in Brasstown. It was really as far as their fame went. But Daddy and Ray, his brother Ray, they played many a fall festival, Friday night concert, and of course other folk school events too. As the years passed, my youngest brother Paul, he started playing lead guitar for them, so he was tied to the folk school by their music too. Some of you may have seen a recent morning song that Paul and his friends Jamie and Kayla they did. It was really great. In those days, though, I would tag along with Daddy and Ray when they come to the folk school, especially to the festivals, which were so much smaller in those days compared to now. In 1988, Douglas Day became the folklorist here at the folk school, and he just really took an interest in Daddy and Ray and gave their music a tremendous boost. He wrote an article about them in the Old Time Herald. He helped them get, book all, how many concerts. He had them playing all over the place. And he even secured a grant for him from the North Carolina Arts Council. And that grant resulted in them being able to actually make an album. And indirectly, I guess, it resulted in them receiving the North Carolina Folk Heritage Award for their music in 1998. That album, I Believe in God, was recorded right here in Keep House, which is really neat. Daddy and Ray passed on their love of music to the next generation, and even to the next generation, to their grandchildren. So over the years, our family in various versions have been included on different music compilations produced by the folk school. Meeting in the Air Sacred Music of the Southern Appalachians featured Daddy and Ray on 2 different tracks, which was really nice. And the very last, I think it's the last folk school compilation. It's the last one we were on, but I think it may be the last one that was produced. It was about a year or so after Daddy died in 2016. The folk school come out with Night Hoots and Morning Songs, Volume 2, and it has a recording of all of us playing Rock of Ages here on the stage in Keith House, and that's like 3 generations of our family. And my daughter Corey is playing the mandolin and lending her voice to Paul and Pap's amazing harmony. Katie's throwing in the fiddle here and there, and I'm playing the bass. Paul keeps us all on track in that song with his solid guitar playing, and Pap's beautiful tenor voice, of course, is leading us and encouraging us. When it first came out, we were so excited about it. I bet we went out, Paul come up to the house, and I don't know if y'all do this or not, but we go out to the car to listen to music sometimes. So his truck has the best stereo. We probably listen to it 100 times. It's just like getting a gift, though, that we didn't really know existed. We didn't realize David Gross had recorded us, so we didn't even know that it existed. And then there it was on the CD. For a brief time, both Katie and Corey, my daughters, both worked here at the folk school. And Katie helped out in the archives, and one day while she was cataloging items over there, she came across just a wonderful photo of Pap, of Daddy. I'd actually been there the day it was taken, but I didn't realize that the photographer had also been taking photos of us, of Daddy and me. I was in a few of them. Mine were not that good, though. But it was Anna Shearhouse Curran. A lot of you will remember Anna. She worked here at the folk school with David Rose, who was the folklorist at that time, and she got Daddy to take her on a tour of Brasstown of the oldest homes he could remember. We trapped through the woods to find some of them, and then some of them were easier to get to. But she took that picture that day. I'll show it to you. I'm still paranoid about the video if it works. But it's a fantastic photo, and again, it was just like getting a gift from the folk school because we didn't know that it existed. Katie and Corey, my daughters, they started clogging for the folk school when they were in about 5th grade. And soon afterwards, they started participating in contra dances, May Day parades, Christmas parties, and other folk school activities. They looked forward, of course, to Little Middle Folk School every year and enjoyed it until they got too old to go, and then they started assisting in some of the classes that were offered. For many years, we've been on the annual pilgrimage, felt like a pilgrimage, to Berea, Kentucky with a group of youth from the folk school in the community here to participate in the annual Mountain Folk Festival. Marguerite Butler Bidstrup, who helped Olive Dane start the John C. Campbell Folk School, had a hand in starting the Mountain Folk Festival in Berea. And I'm going to share an excerpt from an article written by her about the first Mountain Folk Festival. The article was originally featured in the Mountain Life and Work magazine, which was published for many years in Berea by the Council of the Southern Mountains. Our first Mountain Folk Festival will be a festival of folk games, folk songs, and folk plays. Berea was chosen because we turned to Berea as a sort of mother of mountain schools. The festival is primarily for the joy of sharing and passing on such folk material. One of the great reasons for the occasion, however, is the joy which comes from doing games together. Bob Dawsmer, who was the music and dance coordinator for the folk school for many years, he always led our group each year. It was always a lot of fun and very rewarding to see so many young people dancing those traditions and trying to keep them going, if you will. On every trip, though, I would find myself thinking about Marguerite and wondering, I knew she would have to be pleased that relationship between Berea and Brasstown was continuing. As the girls grew up, they began playing music and singing. My brother Paul started singing with Pat, and they started performing together here at the folk school. The girls and I joined them, and gradually over time, as Pap's health issues just increased, the girls and Paul did more of the singing, with Daddy just joining in every now and then. The girls were also blessed to be part of the Folk School's annual Dance Musicians Week for many years, and that was due to the wonderful generosity of an anonymous donor. They not only learned much about music and dance, they made friends, of course, as well as one of the most important mentors of their life, David Cameron. After Pat passed away, we continued to play Friday concerts, me and Paul and Corey and Katie, fall festivals and other events. The Pressley girls themselves were on a regular rotation of morning song. In 2018, the Folk School published the most recent cookbook, the Folk School Cookbook. I was honored to have my biscuit recipe included in it, and the girls were thrilled to show up in some of the beautiful photos shared within the cookbook. Of course, over the years, I've taught classes on Appalachian foodways here at the Folk School and just greatly enjoyed my time with the students. And then there were the amazing connections I made when I worked here, from getting to know staff and instructors better, to learning more about the history of the school. It was all a true pleasure, especially I got to meet Darcy that way. We had a lot of fun, didn't we, Darcy? We did, yeah. So now that I've shared so many of my Folk School connections with you, I want to give you a visual to go along with them if it works. I'll be sharing some photos as well as just some little video clips from ones I've taken over the years, from Fall Festival, May Day, clogging, Friday night concerts, morning song, and Dance Musicians Week. So I'm going to turn around though, Darcy, so I can do this.
This is the one we did, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but I want to talk through it a little bit. So where I can still be heard though with the microphone. Maybe I could just hold. There it is.
You can hold the microphone.
Yeah, I can take it out. No, I'll stand here. I think this will be good.
Want me to go back?
Yeah, you want to start over with you? So this is one of my favorite photos of Olive, Dane, and Marguerite. I love, of course, the little lamb, but mostly I love that they just look so content. They just look so happy to be here. There's Olive, Dane under the grape arbor. This is some of those wonderful pledge cards. This one was C.B. Green, 5 days work each year for 3 years is what he pledged. This one was from G.W. Crisp, which was 73 years old, and he pledged build and stone, any suitable on my farm, and that he would even bring it if his health permitted. John Logan, 10 days work with team first year, 5 days work with team each additional year for 2 years. This one is great. It's Miss Lillian Scroggs, and she pledged 500 narcissus bulbs, all varieties, 25 peonia eyes, 3 colors, any wild shrubs, and any local stone on her farm. Whitney had loved to have seen her flower beds. Amazing. William Clayton pledged first year 30 days of work, each additional year 10 days work, 10 building logs, 3 loads firewood each year for 5 years. So he pledged a lot of materials, but he pledged a lot of hard labor too. Lloyd Payne pledged 6 days work yearly for 3 years. S.A. Carringer pledged 20 days work, man and team, each year for 3 years, 3 loads firewood per year for 5 years, any suitable stone on his farm. And the Carringers still live just down the road, which many of these names are still found here in Grasstown. So that's only a very small sampling of the pledges. I want to let you hear Oscar Cantrell. I wonder if we should play on the thing.
We think it will this time.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're going to hear him talk about the pledges and how he ended up at the Folk School.
When Miss Campbell and Marguerite came in here looking for a place to put the school, why, they called a meeting, and we met out here at an old church, and they wanted to see how many people were interested in having them here. And so they got all people in, together, and then they wanted to see if there was interested, how much they would give for to get them here. And so each one donated so much of different stuff. Some had stuff they give them, and lots just donated their time, to help them. So that's the way I got connected with them. I donated some time, labor, to help them out.
Wasn't that wonderful to hear him? So he was here many years as a blacksmith and helping just with everything. This is a wonderful photo of the Little Brasstown Church, dinner on the grounds. So those would have been the families of a lot of the people who donated things to help. This is a great photo, shows some of the changes of the folk school. That's down by the blacksmith shop. Of course, you can see the dirt road, but I love that tree over on the left there, thinking about that big, huge tree. Of course, it's gone now. This is Fredo Scroggs, who was a shop owner here in Brasstown, but did play a very prominent role in making sure the folk school ended up here in Brasstown. This is one of those great dairy photos. I wonder if my uncles delivered milk that day. Another photo of the cows going down to the barn to be milked, I'm sure. This was a porch here in Brasstown, a store porch. I'm guessing it was Fredo's. I love the men's hats, of course, and I'm wondering if they knew my Papa Wade. This was what the dining hall looked like when it was here in Keep House in the basement. Much smaller than what we have now, but very nice still. These next couple show some of those wonderful folk dances and folk games that Marguerite made sure that we continued. Another photo shows there the dirt road instead of the paved, and you can see farmhouse there in the distance. This is my great Aunt Hazel, so this was her wonderful Christmas story that she told me about being here at the folk school. All the way on the right, that's my Mama Marie, and beside her is her sister Erna that worked here at the folk school too. That's Mama Marie and my Papa Wade. This is a school photo from when Pap was in school at Martins Creek. He's the second boy, or the first boy in the second row, all the way on the left. And this was in the days when the folk school did go out into the schools and teach folk dances and folk games. Another photo of Pat. This is that wonderful photo I was saying that Katie found that Anna Shearhouse Curran took. Look at the beautiful tree, the cattle there, and just out of frame is the wonderful old house that we were visiting. I have another story though about that tree connected to the folk school. One year during Dance Musicians Week, I stopped on my way home from work to pick up Corey and Katie. It was coming a terrible storm. I waited in the car till it was over. They come, we loaded up the instruments, headed for home. We live on that road there just behind the tree, and as soon as I turned off the main highway, I knew instantly something was different, but it took me another second to realize it was that tree had come down in the storm. Thankfully, it didn't hit the house, didn't even hit the pasture fence. It just laid itself down right between the two. But I still miss that old tree. This is a photo of Daddy and Ray from Fall Festival. Daddy is on the right. It's another one of them taken here in Keep House. These are from the folk school archives. All of these photos are. That's a great one in a local church. I'm sure this was Fall Festival probably or some other event. There they are singing. This is a great one. This is Fall Festival. That's Daddy and Ray, Perry Stalkup, and my brother Paul. And I think that little girl's Emmeline Lyden. Martha will have to tell us if it is. We can't go back probably, but maybe it is. Fall Festival. That's me and Daddy and Paul playing. There I am waiting on Daddy and Paul to get situated. This one, me and Daddy are in the back. It's hard to see us, but that's Corey and Katie and Paul in the front. This is the years that Corey and Katie clogged with the folk school. Some of the photos from Fall Festival. This was actually taken in Berea, so this was one of our great trips with Bob Dawsoner. This was an interesting May Day that we had, May Day parade here. It rained us out, so we had to come inside the Keith House, and we had a human maypole that year. Very memorable. You could see the girls was too close to some Morris dancers. This is the Kudzu Kickers. The girls plogged with them in later years, and that was at a Fall Festival here. That was my daddy, that's Pat. He was watching us get ready for Fall Festival, and that's me and him and my mother. That's Granny and Pat and me getting ready for Fall Festival. Here's Mr. Bob Dawsoner in Berea calling a dance. Mary is calling and playing the accordion. It was always so much fun to go to Berea and see all the students and learn the new old dances. They were old dances, but we learned them each year and then danced them all together there in that wonderful gym. Of course, there was a lot of silliness too. One year they asked us to bring a quilt square with them when we come from Brasstown. I'm not a quilter nor a sewer, so that was my contribution. That was it right there. But the quilt square turned out to be beautiful, and Jeannie Marsh and I believe Celia Larson, they were responsible for that. And you see the maypole. So I think that was the 75th anniversary of Mountain Folk Festival, and they were going to make a quilt. I never did get to see the quilt. I assume it's somewhere there in Berea. Corey and Katie in the contra line. This was Kim Joyce's class, and I think Corey and Katie were assisting her that year instead of actually taking a little meal. Katie in one of the studios after a morning song. This is me in the cooking studio. We made an apple stack cake that day. Lots of fun. Often when I taught that class, Mountain Flavors, on the day we ate those wonderful desserts, I would get Corey and Katie or maybe David Anderson to come and to play some music for us, which was always very nice. Now the rest of this video is those wonderful clips I was talking to you about, so you can just watch the rest and enjoy. quit. And if you were here last night, you already heard about it. The beginning of my endeavor to celebrate all things Appalachian actually happened right here in the Keith House when another clogging mother told me about her blog. So that's where my journey started as far as celebrating Appalachia. But thank you all so much for coming and listening to me talk about my connections to the folk school. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.